My name is Dan Finucane, and I'm currently a regent. I love folk music, blues music, and I love singing and playing with other people.
My name is Ian Peoples. I'm a Jesuit regent. I'm kind of a football fanatic. Most of my weekends are spent watching at least a few games. I'm probably one of the biggest Lionel Messi fans. Welcome back to MagisTalk, where we ask the question, where is God calling me today? I'm your host, Ian Peoples, and I'm joined by my Jesuit brother, Dan Finucane.
And Ian told you a little fib because he is not the host today.
I'm the guest.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
This episode marks the third installment of our Meet the Jesuits series. And as you can imagine, as our last episode would have indicated, because there are only two of us, by process of elimination, Ian is on the hot seat today.
Oh no, I'm already sweating.
As you should. Since we live together, I know Ian pretty well, but I'm really excited for you to get to know him better and for me to get to know him better as well from our conversation. And don't worry, because we are going to get to a question that's on everybody's minds and hearts. When is he going to shave and or get a haircut? And will it ever happen again?
Never. It's never going to happen. I'm going to keep growing it out for time immemorial.
All right. Well, we'll come back to that at the end.
I haven't shaved or gotten a haircut since the start of this show.
That is true.
So you have seen the transformation take place over the course of these weeks.
It's beautiful.
I don't want to deprive the people of that. No, I'm hitting the reset button here soon, but to be continued on that question.
It's pretty exciting for all of us, I'm sure. As you all know, Ian is a chaplain at Belize Central Prison, where he works with young men at Wagner's youth facility. That's his primary role there, although we both work elsewhere in the prison. But you may not know that here in Belize, Ian has participated in a couple of other things as well. He's worked at SJC High School. He has volunteered with after-school programming at YMCA and has helped out with some other initiatives with Cisco Woods. So Ian is well established here in Belize. You might also not know that Ian is also an associate editor of the Jesuit Post, which on our laptops, every episode, we've got a little sticker that says Jesuit Post.
.org. Check it out.
And JesuitPost.org features articles, videos on various things related to faith and culture in our contemporary culture, and it's written by Jesuits in formation, including us. Dan
is one of the guys that I help edit.
That's usually. Right. No conflict of interest there. That's great. So when Ian isn't busy with all these activities, he is on the football pitch. We'll talk to him more about that as we go along. But Ian, on a serious note, it's great to be with you and to get a chance to interview you.
Yes. Yeah, these are fun. So glad to be with you. Yeah. And with all of you out there in TV land, radio land, wherever they're at. Internet space.
Just land.
Land.
Really.
Land.
Yeah. Well, good. As we do in our interviews often, we always start kind of where you come from, and not just geographically, although that's interesting in your case, but also, tell us a little bit about your family and how you grew up and what role faith played in your household growing up.
Yeah. So when people ask where I'm from, my immediate answer is Texas, but then I always feel the need to clarify that I was not born in Texas, that my parents both were in the Air Force, and they met in California, and that's where they got married. And then they pretty quickly started our family. My mom got an honorable discharge from the military, and she took up the harder task of raising 3 boys, which she had in 3 years. So I was born in California. I'm the third brother. So my brothers are 2 and 3 years older than I am. And when I was about 3 years old, we moved to Missouri. And
great state.
Yeah, Missouri, as we call it, where I was at, which I think you guys might pronounce it differently over in St. Louis.
We do.
We're in a different part of Missouri. I was on White Man Air Force Base, and I stayed there until I was about 8 years old, and then I moved to Texas, and I really grew up in Texas, in a small town, not terribly far from Dallas, but in Belize terms, it's about 120 miles northwest of Dallas, so on the border of Oklahoma. Small town Texas. So that's where I really grew up. When we were in Missouri, my parents had another baby, my little sister Emily, who I'm 6 years older than. Emily is now a mother to one beautiful little daughter, Brinley Jo, my niece and goddaughter, and she's actually pregnant with another child. So please pray for my sister Emily and their growing family. And then, of course, my two older brothers. One just got married, and then the other one is an eligible bachelor. So if there's anyone out there looking for a great man, Matt Peoples.
Wouldn't it be great if a relationship came?
I would love it.
Show?
That would be God's providence right there. Yeah. So I come from a really close-knit family. I do consider my brothers and my sister, my best friends, and really have a deep love for them and for my parents. And growing up, my mom's actually a convert to the faith. She grew up Methodist, but I think she always kind of looked to my dad as someone who was more involved with their faith growing up. My dad was born and raised Catholic in a Catholic family, and I would say my family, what I describe my family as, is just very strong, simple, basic Catholicism. We weren't particularly devout. We didn't pray the rosary together, but what we did do, we went to Mass every Sunday. We prayed before meals. We had meals together. We had supper together as a family, and we prayed before we began supper. And then, especially when I was younger, when we were growing up, my brothers and I, who all slept in the same room, I was usually on the top bunk. So I always had to avoid the fan when I was waking up in the morning that was on. But we couldn't go to sleep until my dad came in and said our prayers. So he would say the guardian angel prayer with us. Mm-hmm. And so I would say that my family, my life growing up was just marked by very sort of a simple, basic Catholicism. But we were also, my mom, after she converted, when I was in about fourth grade, she became the secretary at our parish. And so the parish priest, a Vietnamese priest named Father Hoa Nguyen, became a family friend. And so we got involved in his life in a deeper way than just going to Mass, and he got involved in ours, and he would speak with the family a lot, and he was the one that really originally got me thinking about priesthood, because when my family brought up the gifts at Mass, it'd be 3 boys. You're like, 3 boys, maybe one will become a priest. And I always had a little voice whisper in my ear. I think it was the Holy Spirit saying, he's talking about you. So that was the one who really got me thinking about priesthood from a young age, even though it took a while to answer that call.
Yeah. And how did faith become a part of your life? So it kind of started out and I think the way it does for a lot of families, saying prayers together around the dinner table, good night was prayer, attending church together. But how did that then develop for you? Was there a point where, things became deeper for you in your faith?
Well, I was always drawn at the Mass, and I think it was through Father Wall that I was really drawn to what was happening at the Mass, what was happening at the altar. I became an altar boy in fourth grade, but I was a really bad altar boy. I didn't really know what to do. I had performance anxiety. I didn't really know what to do, and I was always looking to somebody else to help me. During the summer, and this really became the final straw for my mom, during the summer I would go out swimming all day on Saturday, and then I'd be scheduled to do the vigil Mass that Saturday evening. So I'd be in the Texas sun, which is very hot, and then I would fall asleep serving at Mass. And so my mom was like, we can't have this. So she ended up pulling me out of the altar service. So I usually don't fall asleep at Mass anymore, which is good. Okay. I usually stay awake, so take that, Mom. But it was really through this priest, again, Father Walwyn, who invited me to attend this retreat, the summer retreat for youth called ACTS. So that's ACTS, Adoration Community Theology Service. After 2 years of attending that retreat as a retreatant, I became involved on the leadership of the team. And I think it's during that period and around that time that I really started looking at the faith and taking it on as something that, taking personal responsibility for the faith, even though I was still a wild child and not really living it out very well, but I believed and I took it seriously in the sense that, I felt the call from God to really try to live this thing out.
Yeah. Sounds like seeds were planted.
Seeds were definitely planted, yeah. That I continued to draw grace from as well, for sure. Yeah. So it was really that retreat, the Acts retreat was a huge part. This friendship with Father Walwyn was a huge part. So I would say during 8th grade, after 8th grade, during high school is when I really started to look at this and it became a deeper part of my own self-identity.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then you ended up at a Catholic university for college.
Yeah.
Maybe tell us a little bit about St. Edward's.
Yeah, to clarify, I went to public school growing up. So public elementary, primary school, high school. And then I went to Catholic university, which is actually where I kind of fell away from the faith for a little while. So I went to university, and I was on the NCAA soccer team there, and that's kind of a full-time gig. Like if you do college sports in the States, on one of the university teams, it really takes up so much of your time, and then you have school. And so after that first semester, I would say, of college, I kind of stopped going to Mass, right? And then just encountering all these different people and spiritualities and faith traditions, I never stopped believing in God, which I consider a grace, but it just became a big question mark. Like, all right, I'd had really powerful experiences of Jesus, at these retreats especially, and in my own faith life, but who is Jesus for me? What does it mean? Like, what do I believe, But I think actually stepping away from going to Mass and from sort of receiving the sacraments, I just, I lost sense of God's call in my life, and really kind of lived a life where, of sinfulness and being selfish, and eventually God kind of tugged my heartstrings to bring me back. But so at the Catholic University, it was actually, I went there for 2.5 years, and it was during the after the fall semester of my junior year that I ended up withdrawing from school. But it was also that same semester, that last semester there, that I met guys who are good Catholic guys who helped me start really desiring to come back and to start practicing my Catholic, sacramental faith again. So God definitely worked during my time at St. Edward's University in Austin, but it was a time of struggle, a time of mistakes, a time of learning, a time of experiencing God's mercy as well, I would say.
Yeah. There's a paradox there, right? This, because I certainly have experiences like that too, but that even the moments where we take a detour, and kind of veer off the path a bit, that even those mistakes, that sinfulness can actually be, God can take that and still work with it and draw us back in mercy. The way you put it, tugged on your heart, and tugged you back. Maybe who are these guys that kind of drew you back to Catholic faith? How'd you meet them? What was their?
Yeah, actually, so it was. There was a time before that junior year started when I really started intentionally seeking God, a relationship with God again. And I hadn't started going back to church, but I was praying the Lord's Prayer, and I was kind of praying, and I got to the point of lead us not into temptation, and I was just meditating on those words and sort of reflecting on them. And I was like, well, if God's going to lead me, then I need to choose to follow God. So I was like, God, what do you want me to do? And I didn't hear the words spoken to me like we're speaking now, but I heard them in my heart, quit soccer. Not completely, because I still love soccer. I still play a lot.
Football.
But yes, football. But I took it to mean step away from the team I was on at that time, which took up so much of my time, and which influenced who I spent time with, and all these things. And there are a lot of good guys there that I love, and I appreciated the time that I did have with them. But I just couldn't shake this feeling that this was what God was actually calling me to do. So just days before the season was about to start, I called my coach and I said, I'm not going to play this year. And so when I stepped away, I had a lot of time opened up in my social life. And if I was going to have one, then I needed to find friends.
Yeah.
And that's when a guy from this Acts retreat who went to St. Edwards himself, he and I reconnected. And then he introduced me to his group of friends, which were this group of good Catholic guys. And then I just started hanging out with them that semester. And our time was really, a lot of our conversations were about faith and spirituality, and just, it was really, and the way they had fun was not like crazy partying or anything like that. It was like, maybe they would have some beers and they would just sit around and talk, And it was just a good, wholesome sort of friendship that, I would say was not a common thing for me at college until that point. Maybe when I got back home, I had those friends, but at college, none of my friends from back home went to the same university, and so there's a lot of distance between us. So yeah, these guys, just the way they live, their authenticity, and actually one of those guys named Greg Hakeem was the first one who got me looking at the Society of Jesus. So he was discerning a vocation to the Jesuits.
Okay.
And then that's when he sparked my interest in the Jesuits.
And had you heard of them before?
Not at all. No, growing up in my small town, Texas, I didn't know what a religious order was really. I just knew diocesan priesthood. Yeah. And even though I felt this call to priesthood growing up, the only vision I had of it was the diocesan priest. And our priest, he lived alone. He took care of 3 churches. But really, he lived alone, and I just couldn't imagine myself. I came from this big family, I slept in a room growing up with 2 other brothers my whole life, and so I just couldn't imagine living in a rectory by myself. So that really presented a roadblock, a stumbling block for me in my vocation. But then I learned about community life, and that's when. So I hadn't heard about the Jesuits before, but he really. He turned me on to who the Jesuits were. He gave me a book by Father James Martin called Becoming Who You Are. And that's a multi-biography of 2 people, right? Henry Nouwen and Thomas Merton. And these are 2 guys, 2 priests. And I read that book, and it really provided an insight for me that was revolutionary, I would say, that God wants us to become exactly who He created us to be. So it's not like God wants us to change into something foreign to ourselves, right? But God actually helps ground us in who we are, and God and that sanctity actually means becoming who we are, meaning who God created us to be. And so that was a revolutionary insight for me, and that book actually helped me begin practicing my sacramental faith again. It helped me accept that, okay, God is really wants me to start receiving the sacraments again. And it was around that time that I met another influential person, a parish priest from back home. My mom was still the secretary, but she had 2 priests had come and gone at that point. And so the priest then was Father Richard Kirkham, and Father Richard was a great influence on me. And I remember going to Mass with my parents one Sunday, and then I was like, I need to come back. And after hearing Father Richard Kirkham preach, he was just very down to earth, a good guy. And so I went to a daily Mass on Tuesday, went to the Sacrament of Reconciliation, and then basically started going to daily Mass from then on out. And that's when the call really started.
Yeah. And so that call came, this is, around when is this happening?
This is 2012.
2012, okay. Yeah. And then it was still 3 more years until you entered the society.
Yeah,
so what happened in those years? I know you did some volunteering. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's a funny story actually, because I befriended Father Richard Kirkham, started going to daily mass, and he actually is the first one who advised that I go on an 8-day silent retreat at our retreat center in Lake Dallas, Texas, so Jesuit retreat center. And I was like, well, like, those are expensive, right? I don't know. It was like, well, just wait. Well, Father Richard was friends with a lawyer who was from our area. And in my area, there's a lot of casinos because we live next to Oklahoma, where casinos are legal. And so this lawyer, who was well-to-do, he went to a casino and I think played some blackjack and won a bunch of money that he didn't know what to do with. And so he went to Richard and said, Father Richard, what should I do with this? I don't know what to do with it, And then Father Richard said, well, why don't you help this guy pay to go on a retreat? And it was on this retreat, on the 4th day of this retreat during Mass, where I felt a call to enter the Jesuits. And, I was like weeping at Mass, which usually doesn't happen. And I had this call at Mass, like, that God was calling me to be a Jesuit. And so I like to tell people that my vocation was born from a lawyer's gambling money, which is about right for my life and kind of how God has worked, and I think my own journey, that a lawyer's gambling money is the way in which I would probably get to receive the call of my vocation. Yeah. And so that was 2013. That was right before I went on this year-long volunteer experience working at an at-risk center, or a center for at-risk youth, so a treatment center. And that was a profound time of encountering, I think, suffering and learning the importance of prayer. Because, I worked with kids from ages 8 to 18 who had suffered a lot of abuse, different forms, whether it's sexual or emotional, physical. And so that was really, I just realized and recognized God's great gift to me in my own life and the family that he'd given me. I remember calling my dad after the first day of being there and just saying thank you to him and my mom for just giving me a good life, but that place really taught me the importance of prayer, and I still think about those kids that I worked with who are probably, most of them are almost grown, if not grown adults now, and so I still pray for those kids that I worked with. But that was really a time, I think, of growth in my faith, and then came back and knew I wanted to enter the Jesuits, but still needed a little bit more time. And so I worked as a manager at a hotel, which I hated so much, but it was good data for discernment, as we would say, because like chasing a dollar, I did not want my life to be about that. I didn't want my life to be about trying to make money, and so that was good data, because all was important in that job was just fill the rooms, make the money, and that's not something that I wanted my life to be about. So so it was during that year that I was in the application process and finally entered in 2015.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you met somebody really important on that 8-day retreat.
Yeah.
Maybe you could talk a little bit about Father John Payne.
Yeah, my great friend John Payne. Yeah, Father John Payne, who was the one celebrating that Mass where I really felt this call. And I think it was through his witness, because the way that he was and the way that he preached at Mass, he was so grounded in the realities of the world, sort of the gritty realities of the world. But he also was so alive to Christ's presence in all of that. And I think he was a bridge, that he is a bridge, where he's one of my best friends now. And so I'll point him to this episode. So Father John, thank you for everything. I love you. You're a great man. So he really was a great witness of our spirituality, of how Jesuits are called to go to the tough places and to bring Christ's presence and to find Christ's presence in those places. And I think he has lived that out and continues to do so, and inspires me to do the same. So yeah, Father John Payne was my spiritual director for the year I was discerning and in the application process to enter. And now he's my Jesuit brother and one of my good friends. Yeah.
Well, and clearly his influence is strong with you, because working, as we both know, working in a prison, it's a place that many aren't desiring to go. Many aren't willing to go. But it's a place where indeed Christ is present, and a place where Christ can be preached. And I think we both have had pretty powerful experiences of that. We'll get to that in a little bit, but something that I think is interesting about your story as a Jesuit is that when you went to studies after the first couple of years of being in the society, you did some philosophy, but you also studied journalism and media, and so maybe that's kind of unique even within the Society of Jesus that somebody would study those things. So maybe what led you to that, and how has that been a part of your ministry so far as a Jesuit?
Yeah, in brief, I had studied communication journalism at St. Edward's, but like I said, I withdrew from the school before attaining my bachelor's degree. So I entered the Jesuits without a bachelor's degree, which is pretty rare for us. A lot of guys, almost everyone, virtually everyone enters with a bachelor's. A lot of guys enter with a master's degree. Yeah. Some guys enter with PhDs. So I felt like this tiny little uneducated, dumb guy in the corner, which nobody treated me that way. I have great brothers in the society, but that's how I felt, right? So because we have such impressive guys, academically speaking, in the society. So I went to go finish, and when I went back to university, I was continuing my undergrad at 26 years old, and I kind of felt like St. Ignatius, who's, if you know his story, he went back to school with like 9-year-olds. When he initially had his conversion, he was 31 years old at that point. So St. Ignatius gave me hope. But I went back, and so I was back in undergrad classes, and I was originally missioned to do a double major in philosophy and journalism. But as I was doing my philosophy, which I really enjoyed and love, I continued to read, about philosophy, and I try to keep educating myself by my own reading. But I realized during that time that if I had the credits to be able to complete a bachelor's in philosophy, so I began researching and looking at, well, maybe there's a year-long master's degree that I could do in journalism. And so Fordham University, where I went to do my studies, did have a year-long degree. And I basically just kind of thought about it, and it made sense. Like, why not, get a master's degree and a bachelor's rather than just a bachelor's degree in my time there. Sure. And the communication stuff, I think, we have this show, obviously, which we don't do a lot of the editing and things. That's Sal, who's behind the camera. He does a lot for us with that, which we're grateful. But it has helped me the process, right, of how these things get put together. Sure. And then my work with the Jesuit Post and other writings and other stuff that I've worked on, I think it's a tool. It's a tool for the apostolate. It's a tool that we can use. Multimedia is so important for evangelization, for showing, what the church is doing, for helping people grow in their faith. Yeah. Multimedia is just so important. And so that master's degree, I think, helped me hone some skills and introduced me to some skills which I'm very much a novice in still, but at least they're not foreign to me, and I have some confidence in being able to say, no, I think I could do that to help whatever apostolate I'm at. During my communication studies, there was some dryness, like, okay, what does this have to do with my vocation? But I think in prayer, Jesus told me, like, I can use this wherever you go, Ian. I can use these skills wherever you go, especially with the 21st century, technology, again, multimedia. So I do trust that God called me to that, and that's, and I continue to use it in various ways, and I'm grateful for the society giving me the opportunity to do those advanced studies in journalism. Yeah.
And who knows where
exactly
it'll take you.
Yeah,
right? Because
exactly.
There's, I think, increasingly the having the ability to do media online, huge. Yeah. And it's a way in which evangelization is happening and needs to happen more.
And I think that experience actually gave birth to this show. It was one of the things, right? We both kind of had a desire, but originally we were at the prison, and this was a radio show at the prison. Yeah. And so we were doing the writing, the recording, and the editing. So I was doing a lot of that editing. Well, I think without actually these classes that I took, and I don't think I would have been able to do the editing part. At least I wouldn't have felt as comfortable. I wouldn't have been as ready to say yes.
You would have been like me and been like, I don't understand how to do any of this. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I think that helped give birth to this show as well, which, I'm grateful for.
Great. Well, and speaking of our show and kind of going back to soccer or football.
My favorite topic.
I'm giving him a little bit of grief because on one of our other episodes I said soccer and he corrected me.
As I should.
I'm just returning the favor because it's important. It's important we talk about football. No. So, on our intro to our show, this guy does some nifty football tricks. I don't know how he does it. It seems like he has like glue on the ball and maybe on his shirt or something that makes it happen. But clearly football is an important part of your life.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting that you were willing to give up football in a pretty real way by leaving the team at St. E's. But then, it's clearly still a huge part of your life. And so what role does it play? And, maybe here in Belize, maybe you can tell us a little bit about how it's been a part of your life here.
Yeah, I mean, one of the great things is I think God has used football in my ministry in various ways, which I will talk about. But and I think I've often prayed and kind of thought back on that decision, that invitation from God, right? Because He wasn't forcing me. But I just felt so clearly He was asking me to step away. And I don't know if I would have met that group of friends, if I wouldn't have stepped away, if I would have been introduced to society. There's just so many things that proceeded from that maybe God would have done even if I didn't. But I look at that as a moment that really provided, it was a doorway to a new life that God was inviting me to. And that may seem kind of dramatic, but I do look back and it was a seemingly kind of small choice from my life, and how much I loved the game and how much I loved the game. It could have seemed big, but but God has really used it in so many ways. That one choice to step away has led to a life I couldn't imagine, but which I'm so grateful for. And then how God has used it. Football is really a universal language. I'm not good at anything other than English, and I'm not even that good at English. I'm from Texas, so our accent's kind of funky, and we have weird words like y'all. But like football, I play football well enough, and it is a universal language. Anywhere I've gone as a Jesuit, I've gone to South America, played a lot of football there. Gone to various places in Central America, Guatemala, Belize, played football there. Various places in ministry with high schoolers and the States and Florida, played football there. And it's always been a way of connecting with people. It's a global sport. It's the world's game, the beautiful game, and I think there is something that football draws out an appreciation of beauty. And I think beauty leads us to God. And so I think in some real way, I think soccer, the beauty that's contained in the sport, I think is something that helps me grow in my relationship with God. And it's something that actually provides a doorway for me to talk to other people about God. For example, at the prison, I get some street cred from guys at the prison for being a good football player. And that actually opens up possibilities of conversation with those guys to talk about their lives, where they kind of feel like, oh, who is this guy? It sparks interest, and I can use that interest and that curiosity to help point guys to Christ, right? And to help talk about, God's presence in their lives. And so God has really used it as a way of connecting with people. And through those connections, right, if I'm, attentive and really attentive to the Spirit at work, then those can become moments of grace.
And would you say that football is life?
If you guys watch Ted Lasso, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but there's a character who says football is life. I would say that football is an important part of life, but growing up, it was like faith and football, and I wasn't always sure which one was first.
The two F's.
Yeah, but now it is faith first.
Yeah.
But man, I am obsessed with football, and you know that. I just love the game.
Yeah.
I love the game. So, football is to me as like I think music is to you. Which is why we use that in our introduction to the series.
That's right.
Yes. And I might say, not to brag, but they only saw like one move out of. I got more tricks up my sleeve, y'all.
That clip is part of about a 35-minute long clip.
It's not 35 minutes.
More like 5 minutes, but It's impressive. It's impressive.
Yeah, but no, football has been a great part of my ministry, and God continues to use it. So I'm thankful for that.
Well, it's great at the prison, walking by and seeing Ian with the guys at Wagner's. It's clear that what he's just said is very true. It is a way in which the guys, I mean, to watch them watching you, I mean, they're clearly like, who is this guy? You know, and they are moved by it.
Yeah, and then one other really beautiful thing that I've reflected on, is that a lot of the guys that we work with, a lot of the young men, they're sort of deprived of a childhood, especially if they get involved in the streets at a young age. They just have to grow up really quickly.
Yeah. And
football is it's a space, it creates a space where they can be kids again. Where they can just have fun and kind of be goofy and just have a great time, right? They forget themselves, right? And I think that's at the heart of it. That's what sports can allow us to do, is sort of to take what bothers us or what troubles us and to set it aside for a moment to enjoy something beautiful and something with other people. And so I got to see that. I've seen that day in and day out there, that football provides an opportunity for them just to be kids, and so and that's something that many of them haven't experienced in a long time, or they don't get to experience very regularly because they feel like they need to be tough, right? That's kind of the mentality that the streets have instilled in them.
Yeah.
So football allows them to set that aside for a little while.
Yeah. And I mean, we've already talked a little bit about your ministry at the prison. Maybe you could share with our audience a little bit, how did you end up here in Belize, and how did you end up working at the prison?
Yeah, I remember, as I was discerning my regency, which is this stage of information that Dan and I are in, I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. But then one summer in 2018, I sat next to Father Tom Green, who was the current superior, who was the then superior of the Belize mission for our community here, and now he's our provincial. But and I was sitting with him and just talking about his ministry in Belize and listening to him. It struck me like, oh my gosh, Belize is a part of our province. I could do a regency in Belize, and so I actually reached out to Tom about this, and he suggested I make a visit. So I visited in 2019, and there were a couple other guys in formation who were here, and I got to visit some villages in Toledo district, and then I actually got to go to the prison and meet some of the guys at Wagner's while I was there. I went like 4 days, and it just kind of sparked my interest, and because I desire to be with people, I say the poor, right? And I don't want to romanticize that. I mean, I think there's nothing fun about being poor, about not having access to means, and there's nothing romantic about it. But Christ is present in them in a very real way, and I experienced that during my life as a Jesuit until that point, and I wanted to continue to make that sort of central to my ministry, to be with people who have experienced hardship, and to try to especially to do the work of reconciliation, to try to help people know and recognize the love and that God has for them, and the mercy that God wants to give. And the prison was just a perfect combination of those two things. The desires I really prayed with were a desire to do formation with youth and to do the work of reconciliation. And we could do that anywhere in any of our ministries, but I think the prison provided a special combination of doing both of those things, which I've experienced, and so that's my experience at the prison has really, I think, confirmed the invitation that God had and giving me those desires in my heart. And so it was really manifesting those desires to my superiors. And then I was missioned here in 2020. And in November 2020, I started my work at the prison, which I'm still doing today. So so that's definitely been, and God has been there. And it's not easy. It's not fun all the time, right? It can be very difficult, to draw close to suffering, to draw close to people who are hopeless sometimes, right? Which too many of our young people are here in Belize, as elsewhere, right? And to try to point them towards, the light of Christ, and to help them recognize that, God wants to share life with them is such an important central aspect of our ministry at the prison.
Yeah. And kind of both the challenge and the grace that's in that ministry. Is there a story that comes to mind that really captures, because I think probably both of those things exist kind of side by side most of the time. Is there a story that captures one or both, the challenge and the grace of this kind of ministry for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a young man that comes to mind, a young man that Joshua Powell. Joshua Powell was at Wagner's when I first got there. There was a period when he was out for like a month, and then he came back, and then he was released again in December of last year. And then shortly thereafter, in February, he was murdered. So you might have seen his name in the news here in Belize. But Joshua was a guy I talked with a lot. We had a lot of fun playing football together. Joshua had a great laugh, and he'd like to have a good time, but he also struggled with a lot too. He had a lot of anger issues, and I remember he was in what we call timeout there, to where he was in a separate part of the dorm at Wagner's Youth Facility, in a cell by himself, and I went to go talk to him, and he was just so angry. He was so angry, and he was just saying, "I'm so tired of it. Like I'm so tired. I'm so tired." And he kind of, and I just sat there and listened, and I sat there and I was present to him expressing this exhaustion that he had. I'm just so tired, and I think he was tired of getting in trouble. I think he was tired of being in prison. I think he was tired of the life that in a lot of ways he was born into, and he was just, he was angry, but he was also kind of crying, and he was just so tired. And I didn't have any words to give him. I just was listening to him, and I just sat with him as he expressed that. And I think that is really representative of so much of my ministry there, where we can't fix people's problems there. And we're not there to do that. We're not there to fix people's problems. What we're there to do is to somehow help people know that God sees them, that God loves them, and that God is present to them. And I think I was trying to do that day with Joshua. And I think that's so often what I find myself trying to do is just, I don't have the answers, but somehow mysteriously through my presence, through your presence, that guys on the good days, I think, come to experience that God is present with them, right? And God's there without us, right? God's always there. But somehow our ministry, because we're sacramental people, because we need to touch, taste, feel things to really come to know them, I think our presence can help people know of God's presence. That's always there, but that is brought up and enlivened in a new way through our ministry there. And then I find Christ in these guys too. And so, yeah, but I think just sitting with Joshua in his pain and just trying to be a reminder that, hey, God's with you in this.
Yeah. No, thanks for sharing the story about Joshua, and yeah, sometimes I think when we think about ministry, or when our imagination goes to ministry, we think it's having something really profound to say, or that preaching is always about saying a lot. But I think, your example, your story shows that preaching is often done by presence. And it's the phrase we hear all the time attributed to Francis of Assisi, preach the gospel when necessary, use words. But or St. Ignatius, love ought to show itself in deeds more than words, and sometimes that deed is sitting.
Yeah.
And it's having an ear to the person, to be able to just be angry, to be tired, to be sad, all those things.
Yeah, fidelity, right? Just fidelity to being present to those who are suffering. And I think that's what Jesus did, right? Jesus, he didn't let suffering people remain anonymous, right? He always wanted people to express themselves, and he called them by name, and so I think there's something of Christ's ministry in our ministry, of just being faithful to drawing close to people.
And you've kind of answered this obliquely, but this is my final question. We're companions of Jesus. That's our title, right? That's the group we belong to. And you've had almost 7 years now of an intentional walk with Jesus. Who is he to you?
Jesus is really, for me, just a faithful friend and brother, and by being those things, a savior, right? One who, no matter how often I fall short of the call that God gives me in my life, that he's always there, that he doesn't ever forsake me, that he's always offering me his love. And I think he's the one who makes me want to help others know of that same love. He makes me want to be a better, more faithful friend and brother. Jesus is faithful friend and brother, one who never abandons us. And so that's definitely what I feel in my own life, that God, no matter how many times I've turned away, has never abandoned me. Jesus has never turned away from me. And he's constantly drawing me, constantly pulling me, constantly trying to, point me towards the way that he desires for me, which is the fullness of life itself. And so often I settle for smaller things, right? So often when I don't respond to that call, it's because I think I know better than Jesus, and I think my happiness maybe is in this or that, but Jesus is always the one saying, no, come on, like this is the way right here. And so faithful friend and brother, one who walks with me, who guides me, and just loves me through it all.
Great. Well, I think that's a great way to end, but I do want to get a commitment from you about when we're going to see some sick sideburns.
I don't have sideburns. The people can see it. That's not because I'm shaving that. They just don't exist.
Or, okay, maybe not that. Just like a gnarly goatee.
Yeah.
A mohawk. I don't know, can we get a commitment from you that
no, none of those things. But what the plan is that I've kind of been proceeding with, my sister does hair. She's like a hair stylist. Not that she's going to style my hair, but I'm just trying to build up a nice palette for her to work with. So I'm gonna just keep growing it, and then when I see my sister at the end of May, which it's all gonna be until maybe not the beard, because she doesn't do beards. But the hair, she's just gonna have a lot to work with, and and then hopefully make me look more presentable. So
we're all hoping for that.
Hopefully people don't stop watching our show because of my horrible hair and beard. But if you do, let us know in the comments. Yeah. That's something I might be convinced to shave and to cut the hair if viewership depended on it.
Yeah.
But short of that,
okay,
we keep it going.
All right. Well, our final question, of course, is a question that both of us will answer.
Oh, that wasn't the final question about the beard?
Okay. Because I clearly know how to trim, so.
Wow.
Just kidding. Whatever.
No, you do. Look, that's a nice trimmed beard. Yeah. What's the question, Dan?
So here's the question. If you could meet and hang out with one athlete in the world, and you cannot say Lionel Messi, who would it be, and what would you want to talk about with them?
I cannot say Lionel Messi. That's like saying...
Because that answer is obvious.
Okay, it is. Well, all right, so if I wanted to hang out with one professional athlete, who would it be?
It could be a non-professional athlete, too.
Or an athlete, yeah. Man. It would be Clint Dempsey, who is an American soccer player from Texas, who started playing in the U.S. League, the MLS, and then he went to England and actually did well in the English Premier League. And so one of the few American soccer players who succeeded, and the fact that he's from Texas and, kind of has a Texas swag about him. He kind of has an attitude, and he just seems like a cool guy, and he's Catholic. So he just seems like a good dude to have a barbecue with and just talk about his experiences. I would love to. He's scored against some of the biggest teams in Europe and in the World Cup. He's done. He was very successful during the World Cup in U.S. soccer standards, and I would love to just get him to share stories about different moments that I could name in his career. So I would say Clint Dempsey. Yeah.
All right.
No one was going to know. Maybe a few people in Belize, but hardly anyone.
Yeah.
Throwing it back at you. Which athlete?
So
besides Lionel Messi.
Besides Lionel Messi, obviously. This is the person that came to mind, and it's a strange pick. I would choose Albert Pujols, and it's strange because I have been angry with Albert Pujols for about 10 years now. He's a baseball player, for those of you who may not know of him. Played for the St. Louis Cardinals for the first 10 years of his career.
First baseman, right?
First baseman,
yeah.
And then left for a lucrative contract out in Los Angeles, and has not really been seen or heard from until this year when he rejoined the St. Louis Cardinals, probably his last season. And I'd probably ask him why he left, and for a serious reason, which is he was so, and is still, beloved by the fans. In St. Louis, where I'm from, baseball is it's just a huge thing. We have a hockey team.
Would you say baseball is life, Dan?
For many people, yes. And, we have a hockey team. We had a American football team, but we're a baseball town. And he was beloved. I mean, he was like the adopted son of St. Louis. And he left all that. And I would just be curious to hear, what was it, that drew him away? Because I don't know. I don't know if it was because the image that he portrayed of himself was not that he was, that he really was committed to the city and to the team. And so when he left, it really was, it wasn't quite LeBron leaving Cleveland, but it hurt a lot of people.
Cut to the heart.
It cut to the heart. So I would love to talk to him, and also just about being one of the greatest baseball players of all time.
Yeah, definitely a Hall of Famer. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he's close to 700 home runs alone.
Yeah.
So, anyway. All right. Well, Ian, thank you for being willing to be in the hot seat.
Yes. And it is hot. I'm sweating. I don't know if people can see it, but
yeah, there's a pool of sweat underneath the chair. It's really gross. We'll have to clean it up after this episode. But we're really grateful to hear about your life and about just your ministry, your vocation, all of that. I think I speak for, I'm sure, a lot of people in saying it's really beautiful to be able to sit and listen to your story. So thank you.
Well, thanks for good questions, Dan, and thanks for not giving me anything too hard to answer.
Sure thing.
Yeah, and what message do you have for the viewers? What final message do you have for the viewers, Dan?
Final message that I have for the viewers is that if you like our show and you want to give us any sort of feedback, or if you have ideas for future shows, you can write in the comments on Facebook or on YouTube if you're watching online. And if you're a viewer on Guadalupe Media on the TV show, or if you listen to us on the radio, I don't actually know how you would get in touch with us.
Get on Facebook or YouTube and then leave us a comment.
Exactly. And if you don't know how to use those things, get somebody in your family to show you. It's not too hard. But really, we do appreciate any feedback that you give us. We really do want to take those things into account as we plan future shows. Thanks for being with us, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, y'all.